Hi, welcome back to a brand new video snippet from Z-fari, the zombie novel. Today we're going to read the second part of chapter 22. So without any further ado, wait, let's have a little commercial interruption, shall we? You know, you're stuck at home, bouncing off the walls, wondering what to do, trying to find some way to enjoyably spend your time. I would like to suggest that you pick up a copy at Amazon, because that's the only place that's got it, of Z-fari, the zombie novel. It's a great story. It's so much better than that crap about zombies, like the reality show Zombies, that you see on TV. This is the real thing, with real freaking zombies, that explains where real freaking zombies come from and what might happen when real freaking zombies come back and say take over Kansas. Yeah, I know. I'm just doing this for you. Yes, I am. So, with that having been said, let's get back to it. Here we go. The lunch hour was over. Dr. MacDougall was back in the lab working with the data. The troopers were standing ready to bring the next subject to the cube, but there was no lab assistant. Where the hell was she? MacDougall could do this all by himself this one time, but he needed someone to do the menial tasks. He was the director. He had earned his doctorate. Underlings were there for a reason. He was more important than that. MacDougall walked to his desk and called the dispatcher. He complained that Downs was late returning from lunch and that he had an important experiment to conduct. The dispatcher interrupted his tirade. She informed him that Downs had just called the dispatcher and quit, not 2 minutes ago. Dr. MacDougall erupted. He yelled into the phone at the dispatcher. How could she have let this happen? Why hadn't she sent a replacement to the lab? How long was he supposed to wait for her to do this one simple thing? The dispatcher waited until he had vented his spleen. Then quietly and calmly she told him that she would have a replacement tech in the lab within 5 minutes. Then she hung up quickly before that pompous asshole yelled at her anymore. 4 minutes later, a short, thin young man walked out of the elevator and into the lab. He wore thick tortoiseshell glasses, his mouse-colored hair parted on the right except for a stubborn cowlick sticking up in the back, a pinched expression, and a white lab coat. Dr. MacDougall, I'm your new assistant, Charles McCarthy. Dr. MacDougall had lots to do. McCarthy, he said, we've got lots to do today. I will show you how these sensors, cameras, and microphones are set for our experiments. I will expect you to do this yourself after this experiment. McCarthy seemed to be taking in all of the minutiae as Dr. MacDougall showed him around the lab. When the test subject is brought into the lab, we need the exact measurement of his weight. There are complicated sensors built into the floor of the cube which will give us that particular data. At the end of the trial, we will need another reading of his weight, the doctor explained. McCarthy nodded. Dr. MacDougall turned to the troopers. Please bring in our next subject to the cube. This time, put him out when you get him to the door. You can take the shackles and his clothes off more easily when he's unconscious. The lead trooper nodded his understanding and led his men to retrieve the next subject. They returned within 2 minutes, manhandled the man to the door of the cube, and knocked him out with an injection into his neck. The troopers dragged his unconscious body into the cube. One trooper removed the wrist and ankle cuffs, and 2 others removed the man's clothes. 3 minutes later, a naked man lay sleeping by the rear wall of the cube. Dr. MacDougall motioned to the lab assistant McCarthy. Come over here and watch how I take his weight and upload the data to the mainframe in a folder appropriately named Phase 4, Trial 3. Dr. MacDougall pushed some buttons, flipped a lever or two, and twirled a dial. He moved it again, so very slightly, and then he said, 230.1 pounds, 104,371.6 grams. You will take his weight again at the end of the trial. Do you understand? McCarthy nodded. Troopers, MacDougall said. Ready, zombie number 2 to be put into the cube. I will tell you when I want you to set him loose. The troopers repeated the now familiar procedure of preparing the zombie to play his part in MacDougall's experiments. Willie was brought to the door of the cube and prepared to take his part in the investigation. When the naked man on the floor of the cube began to awaken, Willie was loosed. The dogs of war had nothing on this zombie. It was over in less than 5 minutes. Willie was netted again, strapped back into his chair, and McCarthy adjusted the controls to take the weight reading. 230.0845 pounds, 104,364.6 grams, Dr. MacDougall, McCarthy said. I see, MacDougall said. One of the troopers walked over to Dr. MacDougall and whispered into his ear. MacDougall turned and looked quizzically at him. Really? The doctor said. Yes, sir. I'd better see this for myself. Show me, Dr. MacDougall said to the trooper and followed him down the hallway to the holding cells. As MacDougall walked down the hall, he could hear something moving in the first cell. He looked through the peephole and saw the subject of today's first trial, dead as a trout a few hours ago, now moving clumsily around in a distinctly zombie-like shuffle. Fascinating, the doctor said to himself. To the trooper he said, shoot this one in the head and dump the body over the wall into Z-land. Ik darf es wie ein Loch im Kopf. What? The trooper asked. MacDougall smiled. It's Yiddish. It means I need this like a hole in the head. The trooper nodded in a puzzled sort of way. Yes, sir, he said. When Dr. MacDougall returned to his desk in the lab, he heard a muffled pistol shot. He picked up his phone and called the custodians and asked them to send over the cleanup crew. Then he called his friend Warden Thomas. The doctor told the warden how well the first shipment had worked out, and he asked if it would be possible to have another delivery on Wednesday and a third on Friday. The warden saw his opportunity. He lamented that there was a shortage of product, but for a 10% surcharge for the Wednesday shipment and a 25% surcharge for the Friday shipment, he could guarantee merchandise of equal quality to today's. MacDougall was quiet for a minute, considering his options. He would only need 4 more subjects to complete this phase of the trials, and even though Thomas's price was extortionary, his was, for now, the only game in town. Reluctantly, MacDougall agreed to Thomas's terms. There would be another delivery soon. Dr. MacDougall began to review the data from today's trials, and then a terrible thought struck him. He had just ordered the troopers to discard valuable scientific artifacts. Damn it all to hell. When his work was studied after he was awarded the Nobel Prize, researchers would want to see the zombies he had worked with. Damn, damn, damn. That worthless Downs woman and the mess she had left had made him forget. What else had slipped his mind in the upset she had caused? Damn! Well, he thought, I won't make that mistake again. He turned to the other troopers and pointed at the body in the cube. Cut off its head. I'll prepare the container necessary for its preservation. After that, take the body to the incinerator and burn it to ashes. One of the troopers raised his hand slightly. Sir? He asked. What? MacDougall snapped. He's pretty big, sir. What if he doesn't fit? Well, cut him up in pieces until he does, you moron. Dr. MacDougall walked to the storage shelves on the wall and searched through them for something large enough to hold the dead man's head. There, in the back of the bottom shelf, an 8,000 milliliter borosilicate glass beaker. It just might be large enough. Now to mix up a batch of FAA formalin acetic acid and alcohol. He looked through his store of chemicals and found that he had enough for this batch, but that he would need to order more formalin tomorrow. Dr. MacDougall got to work, and by the time a trooper returned with the head, wrapped in old newspapers, he was ready. He had the trooper lay the head on the counter. The doctor grabbed the head by its hair, held it over the empty beaker, and slowly lowered it. The nose stuck out too far for easy insertion, so MacDougall lifted the head up and laid it back on the counter. MacDougall looked around the lab. There was a reflex hammer on a table on the other side of the lab. See that reflex hammer on that table over there, trooper? The man nodded. Bring it to me, please, the doctor ordered. The man nodded, walked over, and returned with the tool. The doctor grabbed the hammer and placed his other hand at the back of the head. Then he struck the cartilage that made the head's nose stick proudly out. It took him 3 tries, but he flattened it good and proper. He lifted the head again by the hair and lowered it into the beaker. It fit. Well, almost. MacDougall had to push on the top of the head to squeeze it into the beaker, even with its nose smashed almost flat. But a couple of pushes did it. Then MacDougall filled the rest of the beaker with the formalin mixture. That would preserve his first head. A good day's work.